don't think the United States government is asking Pakistan too much. I think we need to eradicate this menace. It is the responsibility of everyone in the world today to stop this happening. It may happen anywhere. And look at the amount of innocent lives lost. We should not encourage this. We should discourage this. And I'm sure the Taliban realize the gravity of the situation. I'm sure they also want to eradicate this.
They're fine words at the diplomatic level and words that one might expect, but if things were to get dicey at home, if there were to be instability, if there were to be opposition, how far is Pakistan prepared to go in this support?
Well, the president has already started talking to the members of the opposition, all political parties and the media. He's trying to arrive at a consensus to see to what extent, to what maximum extent can we support the exercise we have now started and undertaken.
And what might Pakistan want in return from the United States?
Well, this is for both the government to decide. I think most important for us all is to try and resolve this sad and tragic issue. I mean, I think it's a terrible tragedy which has befallen on the Americans. We share their grief, we share their sorrow.
Abdul Qadir Jaffer, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, madam.
Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Interesting stuff there. Well, US President George W. Bush is urging Americans to resume their daily routines and go back to work. For his part, the president gets back to the job on Monday when he meets with his economic team to monitor the reopening of the US stock markets. OK, Major Garrett is going to join us now from Washington with the very latest. Major.
Hey, Major.
Michael, in the early morning hours here Monday morning, a very important day ahead for the Bush White House as it, of course, continues to work diplomatic channels, review military options, and also attempt to signal to the entire U.S. economy and the entire American population now is time to get back to work, to get back to some of the basic routines in this country that were shattered by Tuesday's terroristic attacks. On Sunday, it was a day of prayer for the president in addition to meetings with his national security team. He went to private church services at Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland. Then he returned to the White House with First Lady Laura Bush. And upon his arrival in the South Lawn of the White House, came to the microphone to tell the American public that, yes, Monday was a very important day, a transition point to moving back to some sense of normality.
Today, millions of Americans mourned and prayed, and tomorrow we go back to work. Today, people from all walks of life gave thanks for the heroes. They mourned the dead. They asked for God's good graces on the families who mourn. And tomorrow, the good people of America go back to their shops, their fields, American factories, and go back to work. Our nation was horrified, but it's not going to be terrorized. We're a great nation. We're a nation of resolve. We're a nation that can't be cowed by evildoers. I got great faith in the American people. If the American people had seen what I had seen in New York City, you'd have great faith too.
A fascinating reference there, Michael, by the president. If you'd seen what I'd seen in New York, you'd have great faith, too. Let me show you a picture the White House recently released while the president was in New York City. He was touring Jacob Javits Center, meeting with family members of those firefighters and police officers who died in the downing or the crushing of the World Trade Center towers. This is not the photo that I wanted to show you. In fact, it is in the photo that I did want to show you. It's a photo of the president consoling a woman named Arlene Howard. She was in the Jacob Javits Center, and when the president came to talk with her and shake her hand, she gave the president a cherished memento. It was the badge of her son, a Port Authority police officer. His name was George Howard. He was killed in responding to the catastrophe at the World Trade Center towers. Of course, the World Trade Center is operated by the New York Port Authority. The president spent 3 hours in the Jacob Javits Center meeting with these families of firefighters and police officers. He was only scheduled to be there for about an hour and a half. He stayed an extra hour and a half to console each and every family member. Several senior White House aides simply could not bear the grief in that room. They had to step out. They could not handle it. It was too emotionally racking for them. But the president stayed each and every minute, and senior White House advisors say after that the president was steeled with a sense that he must act in ways appropriate to relieve those families, at least in some small way, of their grief and be confident in leading the United States so that they know, however this eventual conflict with terrorism comes out, that their family members did not die in vain. Michael?
An emotional moment there, no doubt. Major, just before I let you go, the President's plans tomorrow, as you say, it's get back to work time. One assumes he'll be talking economics tomorrow. The stock market in the United States opens in just a little over 5 hours from now. Some people think the U.S. is already in recession. Any talks planned?
Well, of course, all of us here on the overnight shift have to keep our tomorrows and todays straight. We're already in today land. The president will be getting up and getting in the Oval Office very shortly, in about 3 hours. He's always an early riser. Meeting with his economic team. That'll be the first formal meeting with his economic team, though no doubt the president has been in touch with his economic advisors throughout. Senior White House advisors have been reluctant to talk openly about the underlying economic effects of this catastrophe, feeling it's just far too crass to talk about dollars and cents at a time of such great tragedy and grief. But there is clearly a sense of wariness about how this will all affect the U.S. economy, which was struggling to regain its footing even before this. There are profound effects on a couple of major U.S. industries, the airline, Boeing, a major airline manufacturer, the insurance industry, and just the overall sense of consumer confidence. The president throughout the week will be trying to send reassuring signals to the American public that it's okay to get back to ordinary life. It's okay to spend. Don't feel guilty about things such as that. But he'll also be working with Congress on maybe a tax cut package, maybe some extra spending for some particular relief efforts. All those things are on the table. But first and foremost, the president just wants to reassure the American public and try to get back within their mindsets a degree of confidence, short term and long term, about the U.S. economy. Michael?
All right, Major. Thanks very much. Major Garrett there, as always, in Washington. Colleen.
All right, Michael, thanks. Although many New Yorkers getting ready to go back to work, some are still waiting for news of colleagues, friends, or family members who are still missing. Rescue workers are searching through the night, as they do every night, for any signs of life. For more on what's going on in New York right now, let's go over to Alessio Vinci. Alessio?
Well, hello, Colleen. It's well past 4 a.m. in the morning here, and there is still a lot of activity surrounding the site where the two towers crashed. We just saw a couple of fire trucks passing by, police department vehicles. We're seeing another trucks coming by. It's really going full swing. Those rescue workers are working 24 hours a day, each doing 12 hours a shift. As you can see from these pictures live behind me, the building and the area where the two towers and the other building of the World Trade Center collapse are still a big pile of rubble, a lot of work to do for the rescue workers. And as you can also see, it is still smoldering. The twisted metal and the concrete is extremely hot, and it's making the rescue operation, of course, extremely difficult. However, the rescue operations and the rescue workers have not given up hope in trying to find somebody alive. They have been cheered by the people throughout the streets of New York. We have seen earlier as a group of firefighters walked away from the site, being cheered by this crowd of people, really trying to give them the energy to continue and excavate throughout this debris in order to be able to find some of the survivors. Mayor Giuliani saying that they're still having hope. However, many of the bodies that were inside the two towers may never be recovered. Back to you, Colleen.
Alessio, I saw some shots earlier sort of that looked down into that crater, and I saw ladders that looked like they had actually been strung together, and the fire officials and the rescue workers sort of moving very deliberately down those ladders. The conditions they face in there, despite the relatively good weather that they've had, the conditions must be awfully difficult.
They're awful, Colleen. It's wet, it's hot, it's stinky. It's really very difficult for those firefighters to crawl inside the lower levels of the World Trade Center. They're doing this because they really hope that perhaps underneath the levels, beneath the World Trade Center, still some people may be alive. There were 7 levels underneath the Trade Center. There was shopping malls there. There was the subway station there. There are some shops with food, and perhaps possibly, conceivably, if somebody is still there alive, it would have access to water and food. And there was a faint possibility that inside that hole, perhaps one of the 5,000 people missing maybe still be alive, and therefore the rescue workers are doing all they can to go deep, deep, deep underneath the earth to be able to pull somebody out alive.
Well, and do you get any sense, I mean, I know you are where you are, do they give you any sense of how close the operation is to getting to that level?
I understood from one person who is talking to a fireman, who's a family member, who's a fireman working on the site, that they have already managed to reach some of the levels underneath the World Trade Center. How deep they went, I don't know. I know that they have already been able to go a little bit deeper, because we have seen from the pictures, those aerial pictures, that they were really crawling underneath the surface of the earth. So certainly they are getting down there. However, as you can see also from the pictures that we have provided to you earlier, there are aerials, there is an incredible amount of damage. Not just the two towers collapsed, but as much as 7 buildings, the entire World Trade Center. So there are still a lot of work to do. So far, 20,000 tons of debris has been removed. One rescue official telling us that as much as 500,000 tons of debris will have to be removed eventually. That's a staggering number, and the rescue official was telling us that it will take at least 2 months to get rid of it.
Staggering indeed. Alessio Vinci, thanks very much for that update. Michael?
Thanks, Colleen. Well, as we've been saying, New York Stock Exchange is reopened in just a few hours from now, about 5 hours in fact, for the first time since the attack. Security, as you might imagine, is high around Wall Street. Trading was suspended for 4 days last week, the longest halt since at least the Great Depression. Over the weekend, officials and traders tested equipment, reconnected phones and tried to make sure it is safe for workers to return. Obviously a priority. Well, European markets have been up and running for more than an hour. Let's see what they're doing ahead of Wall Street's open.
Yeah, that's right. For that, we're joined by Richard Quest, who is in London with details, keeping a close eye on all of this for us. Richard, how's it looking now?
Good morning. It's 10:30 across Central Europe, 9:30 in the UK. And Europe's main stock markets are all sharply lower. There are, of course, worries about what will happen when Wall Street opens later this Monday. Taking a look at the numbers as they appear to us at the moment, all the major indices had been pretty much up and then down a bit. London's FTSE is now off 59 points. The Frankfurt DAX down 88, Paris down 95. Interestingly, that market had been up at the open. The Zurich SMI is down 115, the largest losses being seen in Switzerland, and that's because, of course, Swissair, which is seen a 15% reduction in its share value, is taking that market with it. But in 5 hours' time, the US markets open after the longest delay of trading since the Depression in the 1930s. And investors are bracing themselves for intense uncertainty. Some expect a patriotic rally. Others expect the market to fall. But analysts believe it'll be some time before we really know what's happening in the market.
It's going to be more of a symbolic opening than an actual opening today. I think volumes are likely to be less than some analysts are forecasting. This isn't the climate, I think, for mature, sensible investors to rush into investment decisions. There are just too many uncertainties, and I think there's going to be a wait-and-see attitude on behalf of many of the fund managers.
Todd Benjamin, our financial editor, joins us to give us some perspective. A patriotic rally, the potential for that. Basically, people going into the market to buy, a bit like in the 1920s with Rockefeller and Morgan.
Well, there's a lot of speculation about that, Richard, but I think the market's certainly going to open lower because of the events of last week and the way that both the European and Asian markets have reacted. Even if there is a patriotic rally, it'd probably be more on behalf of small retail investors and large institutions, although we know several companies have announced they're going to have share buybacks.
Is there more work for the central bank, the Fed, to do?
Absolutely. I mean, the Fed has been doing a yeoman's job, as it does in these times of great uncertainty. It injected massive amounts of liquidity into the market last week, some $80 billion worth. There's speculation that they will actually make an interest rate cut, possibly as soon as today, but that is conjecture.
Todd, briefly, you've been talking to the European markets this morning and the fund managers and finding out what's been happening. Is it just wait and see?
Well, I think it's very much wait and see. There's a lot of nervousness out there. It's reflected in the numbers you just gave on the European markets. They were trounced last week, and trading is very thin, and so the downside is exacerbated. But everybody is looking to New York. Psychologically, it is the biggest market, and financially, it's the biggest.
Todd, many thanks indeed. You can see exactly why New York